be recorded.
Good morning, Franklin County. Diana Zinel here from the Franklin County Chamber of Commerce, joined this morning by Shannon Prescott. Hi, Shannon. Good morning.
Hi, good morning.
Shannon is just a great chamber member, somebody who comes to most of our events, and we love having her around. She's the Property and Casualty Project Manager for the Richards Group, an insurance company. Correct?
Yep. We're an insurance agent.
Right. Okay. So it's been, I'm sure, quite busy through all of this, and does a lot of work with workplace safety and employee safety and that sort of thing. So we thought it'd be really good to have her on. Some of our initial videos talked about our response to COVID and how businesses had to respond by either closing down or reducing workforce. We then talked a little bit with businesses about how they've adapted during this lockdown. And we're feeling like it's time to talk about how we recover and how we come out of this. And a lot of thought is being given to this, obviously, at the state level, Shannon. So I thought you'd be just a great person to talk to about what businesses need to do to be prepared for this next step as we wait for guidelines from the state.
Okay, and so there's stuff that everybody should be thinking about. We kind of have to go back to what were you operating as before? What changes have you kind of made during this time to react to what happened, as we all had to do? Because very few employers had business continuity and plans for a pandemic, unfortunately. I mean, Richards Group included. I don't think any of us expected this fully. So where did you land now? Are you fairly the same? Were you able to move things remotely and it's more of just kind of reopen the actual doors, or did you have to lay people off? And are you even able to bring all of those people back in the same way and do it responsibly? So business have to think now, okay, I'm going to reopen my doors. There's two, in my insurance world, there's two buckets that we're kind of thinking about right now. And the first bucket is, did you make any changes to your insurance coverage when you had to close your doors? Did you have any buildings that became vacant, so you moved them to vacant buildings? Are you reopening those because they're no longer vacant? So you want to make sure that those are properly insured. Did you change payrolls because you had less employees now, and so there's some cost savings involved in certain policies like liability policies and workers' comp and that kind of thing? Did you put everybody, I'm trying to think of the other pieces of insurance here, because the insurance coverage side is usually my teammates' super area, and I'm more of the employee safety side. But there's those kinds of things. Any changes that you made prior, if those are going to change again and you're reopening your doors, you should really make a call to your agent and just talk about what you have and discuss your plan with them, because they can absolutely advise you if maybe you need to raise some limits again or what you should be doing.
Right.
The other half of that is the employee safety side. And so if we are bringing employees back into the workplace, we suddenly have them at a possible exposure to COVID-19 because it is still out there. And while we want to see businesses start to recover and we want to see people come back to work, we also want to make sure we don't see another surge. So there's some states that have put in plans. So I work a lot in Vermont because Richards Group is primarily based in Vermont. There's been plans there with mandatory trainings for employers and mandates on strict regulations around certain businesses reopening that are really good guidelines. That's something to look at maybe for Massachusetts businesses as well, just kind of what are they doing, because they basically took the CDC guidelines and made them mandatory in Vermont. And those CDC guidelines are being pointed to by OSHA. And when OSHA recognizes a hazard, which they have done with COVID-19, and says these are the set of guidelines that you should follow for your employees, they're basically saying this is what you need to follow. And so while there's no written standard around COVID-19, we have the general duty clause that we should act under. And the best rules to follow are the CDC guidelines. And so employers should really look at those guidelines and kind of create a checklist for your own personal scenario with your business. So everybody's going to be completely different. Your setup, your building's going to be different. You have to think about, traffic patterns and how many people you can have in the building at any one time. And it's a lot to go through. I want to kind of offer my help out too. I'm happy to always answer questions for employers that might see this. So just to put that out there, I'm pretty trying to be helpful in this situation.
So how would someone contact you, Shannon, if they did have questions about this?
Easiest way is to email me, which is sprescott@therichardsgrp.com. And again, we're out there just kind of sharing information. I'm happy to answer questions employers have. So again, as a chamber member and a Greenfield resident, I love Franklin County, and I just want to make sure that we survive this too. So any help that we can kind of offer out.
So we all know that sort of the next juncture is this May 18th deadline that's coming up a week from today. We don't know exactly what the recommendations are going to be that come from the governor's office about, maybe businesses that can start to open up in some way, shape, or form. But you mentioned that we know that things are going to be different. So we know spacing and capacity is going to be really important. We know that barriers are going to be really important. We've all seen that plexiglass is starting to go up at counters and cash registers, and I would assume reception areas, check-in desks, things like that. A week's time doesn't seem like a lot of time for a business to prepare, particularly when some of these supplies are in really short demand. I mean, plexiglass is the new toilet paper.
Right.
It's hard to find. And so it's good, for businesses to be starting to prepare. And I would assume that those cleaning supplies and back to gloves and masks and things like that, it seemed like maybe, they were beginning to get a little bit easier to be able to find, but we may now see that go the other direction because businesses will be looking for them on larger scales.
Yeah, and there's going to be, that's another piece to this reopening is your rules around sanitizing in between things. And even with employees, how often do they need to be washing their hands and getting the hand sanitizer? I've found, and I'm sure you'll agree as a chamber director, that it's really good to source locally and that more of your local businesses can they're still functioning. Even though their doors are closed, you can still call them. Some of them even have online ordering, and we can kind of work out plans with them and help support each other through this. Pharmacies, our local pharmacies that we might have that we could reach out to help source some of this hand sanitizer and stuff. The disinfecting piece too also brings up my OSHA. So I'm also an OSHA trainer. I'm an authorized OSHA outreach trainer. So I teach a lot of this stuff normally. And a big piece that comes up with these reopening practices is we're giving people personal protective equipment, maybe that they've never worn before, like gloves and gowns and goggles and face shields in some cases. There's trainings that need to go in with those too. So employers need to think about not just how are we going to reopen, but how am I going to communicate this plan to my employees before they enter the doors? Because that's what OSHA, before they enter the area of the hazard, they have to be trained about the hazard. So along with the cleaning too, there are hazard communication standards. So anytime there's under hazard communication is the global harmonizing system. The global harmonizing system has specific training requirements for employees, and it's still fairly new to the US. It was effective in 2013. So some employers I come across still haven't even heard about GHS. And part of that training says anytime you introduce a new chemical into your employees' duties, that you have to give them a training on that chemical, access to the safety data sheet. They have to understand what personal protective equipment to wear with it, what the hazards are. Is it a physical or a health hazard? Could it burn them or cause cancer? There's all sorts of things that go into this. So that's another piece to think about. These are the chemicals that we're going to be using. Here are the hazards that are associated with those chemicals. Here's how to understand the labeling. And here's what you need to protect yourself while you're using it. Oh, and here's how to use it properly. So like you said, there's a lot, but it's doable, and it doesn't have to be as daunting as it sounds.
Well, you brought up two good points. One was part of the effectiveness of PPE. I mean, it's difficult to get, so getting it is the first step, but then using it properly is, how many people are we seeing with their face masks under their nose.
Yeah.
And so, employees, it's a little bit of a learning curve for everybody, for employers
Yes.
and employees and just the general public who's finding themselves having to wear things that they never expected they'd have to wear. So there's a little bit of a learning curve. And then you mentioned about locally sourcing things. A lot of it's been so hard to find things, and yet some of our local businesses have had some of this stuff all along.
Yeah.
Baker Office Supply has had toilet paper this entire time, an office supply store.
Who knew?
So always check with your local businesses. I know the smaller markets and grocery stores that we have, Foster's, Food City, Cheslick's Market, they've been pretty stocked with things like toilet paper, flour that you couldn't find other places. And I suspect that maybe with PPE, the same is true. I know that for a while, PPE was hard to find anywhere. But hopefully those supplies are coming back, and now that people are going to need them even more. And even people who have been staying home are now going to need it if they decide they want to venture out. I've been wearing a mask to the grocery store. That's the only place I go. If things open up and I can start maybe doing some other errands or going some other places, you might need more of that stuff. So you touched on that a little bit. That's that action plan for employees that we were talking about. And so you have a webinar coming up that might be helpful. That's for employers. Did you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so before this all happened, we were, not before COVID happened, I should mention, when Vermont came out with their employee mandate training and gave everybody a week to get it implemented. So it kind of threw everybody for a loop. So we were actually planning something similar to that, and then the governor over there beat us to it. So we were planning this webinar series. And now that we've gotten this big piece out of the way, we wanted to focus on kind of helping businesses reopen. As we look at, we operate a lot in Vermont, Massachusetts, and New Hampshire. Those primarily are 3 states, and we're all very similar. And so we're watching these guidelines. We're all kind of opening up in stages about a week away from each other. And we want to make sure that businesses have an easy way to kind of figure out what is it that I need to do? So I'm doing this with one of our owners, Peter Richards. He's our Vice President of Property and Casualty. And he's going to cover some items that employers should think about for their insurance side that I kind of mentioned in the beginning poorly, because that's his expertise area and not mine. And so like on a liability side, on, workers' comp side, that kind of stuff. And then I'll do a portion as well as kind of creating a checklist of things that we should be doing before reopening our doors to assess for employee safety hazards. There's, a few different things to think about as we go in there. And so I mentioned a couple trainings that would need to be done, like personal protective equipment and hazard communication, but that's not the only piece. And there's potential record keeping as well for certain employers. So there's things that we have to think about there that we'll just kind of touch on and that's open to anybody to attend, and it's free.
Can you tell us how they find it and how they sign up to be part of it?
Sure. Well, I'll share the link with you for the registration so that you can share it too, but it is on our website. So if you go to therichardsgrp.com, you'll open up to our statement about why we're closed, but working remotely. And then from that page, there's a link to our COVID-19 Resource Center.
Okay.
And then within there is a training link. So it's a little buried in there, but I'll get you the link too. But if you go to the training links on our COVID Resource Center, then you'll find the webinar.
Oh, that would be great. Because I think you said that there could be up to 1,000 participants. So this is something that, a large number of people can take advantage of and learn some things that, we're all going to need to learn a little bit of different protocols for, what life looks like in the coming months. And great. Well, is there anything else you wanted to touch on, Shannon, or just that I guess this is constantly evolving, right? So you, in a business like yours, you have to just constantly change with it.
So and anything with safety and health, we call it a cycle anyway. Everything is a constant cycle. And I just want to I know this stuff can be scary for employers, and I know I've talked to a lot of people over the last few weeks that trying to help ease worries and burdens and that kind of thing. You're all in the same boat. You are all asking me the same questions. So I just want people to like, you're not alone. And again, I offered out my help there. Please, please, I'm not joking. Please reach out to me. I will help share resources and information as much as I can. Just want to do that as a community member with those resources. And yeah, I just hope everybody stays well.
Exactly. And like I said, you know, we're optimistic,
Yeah.
but we have an extreme responsibility to make sure that any new movement that's happening around here is done in a way that ensures we don't have you know, another surge or lead to more cases spreading. I mean, that wouldn't be good for any of us.
No.
Because it's, you mentioned it being a scary time for employers. It's a scary time for consumers, and it's a
Yeah.
scary time for employees. It's a scary time for all of us. And so, you know, knowing that we have, you know, people like you who are basically safety and health watchdogs,
All
it's
I
really
do.
reassuring. I know
Yeah.
it's all you do, and I know how
All
much
I
you
do.
love it too. We've talked about that long before any of this happened, how much you love that part of your job. So,
I will
Shannon, I
help.
was really happy to have you on today and to be able to get, you know, some of these resources out there to people. We'll make sure that we post the link in the post about this video, and then people can take a look at that webinar, which will also be available afterwards, right? Not just
Yes.
live. It will be
Yeah.
okay.
We'll
So
get you
that
the link to the recording too.
when
And
does it actually happen live?
Wednesday, 10 a.m.
10 a.m. Okay, so
Yeah.
that's good to know. All right, I
Yeah,
might actually
Wednesday,
watch
10
that
a.m.
myself because the chamber
Good.
has to reopen, and you
Yeah.
know, we have a counter, and we have tons of visitors in there all the time. People come in, and you know, I guess we need to think about how we can do that to protect Marion, who's right
Yeah.
there, and making sure that, you know, we all stay healthy as well. So
Yeah.
Shannon, thank you so much. I can't wait
Thank you.
to see you at real events again, because you're always one of my favorite people to have there. But we'll get there. And again, it's really comforting to know that, you know, that there's people like you watching this. I want to add one more thing, and that is I did have a meeting with someone from the governor's advisory board, and it's really encouraging to know how much information and opinions they're trying to gather from businesses across all sectors, because this will look different for a daycare, a restaurant, a hair salon, you know, golf courses, tattoo parlors. I mean, you could name so many that things will look different. And I think that we're going to see specific guidelines that are really, you know, catering to specific types of businesses.
Yeah,
and how
they're
they
going
each
to
have to react.
They're going to
Right.
have to. Vermont singled out construction, manufacturing, and retail right now. And that's another area. I actually have sample template plans, action plans that I'm happy to share with members if they want to reach out in those specific industries, because they are different than just a general plan that an office might need.
Right.
So those, we do need to think about our own specific, well, retailers might face a lot of the same risks. Everybody's going to be a little bit different in how close they actually get with their customers. So like a hair salon, you have to get up and close. So that's going to be a little different.
Yeah, this has to be very strategic. And it sounds like it's going to be. So that's good. We all look forward to normal times, right? We all look forward to getting back to the way life used to be. I think it's going to take a while, and it's going to take some effort and some patience. But if we do it right, we'll all be okay.
Yes.
So Shannon, thanks again. I appreciate it. I look forward to seeing you, and I may actually watch the webinar myself. I think that's going to be really useful information. All right, very good. Thank you so much.
Thanks for all you guys are doing.
Oh, thanks.